Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. This is a podcast where you learn how to parent your kids in a compassionate and loving way while also enforcing strong boundaries and limits, all while staying calm. And I'm your host, I'm Darlene Childress. And today I'm going to talk about creating a play-based childhood. And we're going to talk about kind of the reason why play-based childhoods are important. And it's not just because it's fun, although that is not a problem, right? And we're going to talk about why it's important, why we have moved away from play-based childhood, and what kind of where we're at in as a society, and then some strategies for you to bring play-based childhood back into your family. So for wherever you are, when I go through this episode and I give you all these tips, I want you to just come to this podcast episode from a place of curiosity and openness and not self-judgment or self-criticism. Because as moms, we often will listen to something like this and we'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it all wrong. And we will beat ourselves up and not feel good about ourselves and we'll criticize. And I really don't want you to do that. I want you to see this as an invitation to move towards something new. That's all it is. And you don't need to look back at where you've been in judgment or criticism, just in curiosity of like, oh, I could see where our pattern in our family is more focused on screens or activities, structured activities, and not so much on free play. And so you can make a decision. I'm going to move towards more free play. So be gentle with yourself as we go through this episode. Okay, so the first thing I want to frame for you is just that play is very, very important for your kids. They need time that's unstructured, which means that there's not an adult-led activity. That's just open hours where they have time to explore the environment, explore their creativity, explore their social relationships and conflict resolution and all of those things. It is vital because the purpose of play is for kids to learn how to be adults, how to be grown-ups. They learn through play. And so when we create time for open, unstructured curiosity, movement, play, then our kids will learn faster, actually, of how to be more responsible, understand how the world works. Kids want to play, kids need to play, and when they don't have the opportunity for free, unstructured, and loosely supervised play, they are deprived cognitively, socially, and emotionally. So don't get nervous. Just realize like, oh, this is very, very important. Now, here's why, okay? If you think about our species, like our human species, our offspring are with us for a very long period of time, right? They don't launch into the world and be independent for a long time, like we say 18 years old. And now, they're not able to drink alcohol or do a bunch of things until 21. And then they can't really, do financial stuff a lot of times until they're 25. And so even we've learned that the brain isn't even fully formed until the prefrontal cortex isn't fully formed until 25. So we have this very long period of time where our species is dependent. Like, I'm just thinking about, say you're 25, 50, 75, right? I don't know what the lifespan is, but it's probably, around 75, 78, something like that. So it's like 1/3 of your life, you're sort of dependent, which is insane. Most of it after 18 is like financial dependency, but it doesn't have to be. Your kids can become independent earlier. Even if we look at it like 0 to 18, it's a huge chunk of life, 20%. So your kids, the reason why it's like that is because that there's a lot to learn in order to be a human. We have to, of course, our environment is a very complex natural environment. So kids have to learn how to move their bodies in a variety of ways. we're not just birds, or we're not just swim animals that's, like live in the sea. We're animals that go in trees and that climb and go through all sorts of different climates and water and all of this, right? So our kids have to be learning a lot of gross motor development and fine motor development. So they have to learn to run and jump and swim and climb and drive and all of these things with their bodies. They also need to learn how to do fine motor development, writing, using tools, typing, swiping, cleaning, cooking, dressing, putting buttons on, tying shoes. We need the ability to use our big muscles and our fine muscles. And that takes a long time as a species to get good at. We also have to learn a lot of things cognitively. Our brains are really active as a species. We need to learn how to read and do math and cook and understand science and follow rules and use the computer and understand how governments work. So we have to have a whole bunch of brain skills. So we have to have physical skills, we have to have psychological skills, like neurological skills in terms of being able to understand and think, like what I'm trying to say, cognitive skills. And then we also need to have a bunch of social skills. So the social learning is very, very important for our species. You have to understand history and storytelling and self-governance and sportsmanship and cooperation. Know how to read nonverbal clues. Know how to resolve conflict. So as a species, the kids have a lot to learn. And a lot of the physical learning is from 0 to 7. And then a lot of the social and cultural learning is 9 to 14 and then beyond that. So we really need to see that our kids have a lot to learn. And learning as a species happens through experience, not information. The way that we learn best is by experiencing. The value of all the play is that your kids will learn all of these things in ways that feels really fun and interesting and challenging, and they can struggle a little bit and they like it. So we want to really activate as much play as we can in our kids' lives. I want to repeat that really quickly, that experience, not information, is the key to emotional, psychological, physical, cultural development. And I like to joke that if lectures worked, I would not have a job, right? Like, we all want to tell our kids how to act, and we want to tell them what will happen, especially when you have teenagers. And they don't listen. They have to go through the hard things. They have to say the wrong thing to the teacher. They have to be late. They have to kind of experience some of this stuff in order for their neurons to fire and wire for that learning to happen. So experience is so important. And so the more we can access that for our kids, the more important, the more valuable it will be. Now, okay, so we're saying here that play is really important, and children's natural way of learning is play, and that it's vital. So why would I need to have an episode on it? Like, isn't it obvious, right? But the truth is that as a society, we have moved away from play-based childhood and more in terms of structured academic enrichment environments, or phone-based childhoods, screen-based childhoods. I'm not going to go super far into the screen thing. I'm going to talk a lot about that in the next couple of episodes. But essentially, at one point in time, like in the early 90s, getting into college became more competitive. High schools kind of changed their focus so that every kid who graduated from high school would be able to apply for college. And so then that meant that there were a lot more people qualified to apply for college, which meant there were a lot more people applying. So then that made college admission more competitive. And so because of that, we all, like as a society, sort of was like, oh, shoot, we've got to give our kids a leg up. We've got to prepare them. We've got to make sure they have really good grades. We have to make sure they have really good test scores and are good test takers. And this ramp up towards academic achievement really became more important than some of those other things I talked about around gross motor development, fine motor development, social learning, even cognitive function in terms of science or creativity or, cooking or any of those other things that you need your brain for. It just became about being, a good reader and good at math almost. We just over focused on those things. And because of that, there was a lot more enrichment, which meant a lot more structure. So we've got our kids in tutoring, we've got them in foreign language instruction, we've got them in, like not martial arts and sports and art class and music class. And all those things are cool, but they're structured environments. They are adult led. And so it's not necessarily play. It's like going to class. They're called classes, right? They're meant to learn a specific thing and not follow their own interest or creativity or unstructured curiosity. So that's a big reason why kids don't have a lot of free, unstructured time. And then what happens as a community is that you may want your kids to not have unstructured time, and you want to have them be available for play dates and park, hanging out at the park and all that in their neighborhood. But because everyone else is focused on this kind of lifestyle of academic achievement and enrichment, no one is available. Everyone is so busy. So then you put them in classes with their friends so that they're with their friends and they get to socialize, and it's still structured. So that is one of the reasons why it's very difficult to create a play-based childhood. The others is that we've created cities that are very car-centric. So kids can't really get places or explore open spaces because we've kind of destroyed open space and also made a car-centric environment. So kids can't really get around it very easily. They need a parent taxi in order to get to things. And that greatly decreases their free and unstructured play. Other reasons that we've moved away from play-based childhood is that we don't know our neighbors very well. We've kind of lost some of that social connection. Our kids don't go to the same neighborhood school as some of their neighbors because of school of choice, which school of choice is great if your school district offers that, where you can go to any elementary school or middle school or high school within your school district. That is a cool option, but at the same time, it does pull kids off of the streets and off the streets, but like pulls them away. So they're having to be driven to school, driven away from their neighborhood. They make relationships with people who don't live in their neighborhood. So then kids will live on the same street and not know each other. They'll be the same age and not know each other and not play with each other because they don't go to school together and their lives are separate. So again, good intention, making sure kids have access to education that is a best fit for them, and it's pulled kids away from the play-based childhood. The other bigger reason is ultimately the 24-hour news channels, and now we have like alerts on our phone. We don't even have to watch the news, and people are like, I don't watch the news. And it's like, well, how many things are popping up in your feed that are like newsworthy, right? And a lot of that news is negative because they want to get you to stop the scroll or to pay attention. So the notifications and things like that come through on your phone are like, alarming. And they're supposed to be alarming. So then you go, ooh, what's happening? And then you take action and pay attention to the news channel, right? Or whatever it is, you click the article, right? Clickbait, that kind of thing. So because of that, we don't have as much trust of other adults. And we are now parenting often in silos, which is really hard. It's very hard to raise kids. So the reasons that we are in the place that we're in is not like you as a family. It's not because you're like, oh, I'm overstructured and over, activity in my kid and like something's wrong with me. It's like, no, you are parenting in a system and a society the way it is now. And I want to help you see that you can opt out of some of it, and you can get some friends to say, hey, instead of doing this basketball enrichment class, what if we all just like hung out at the park? What if we all just like let them, roam around in our backyards even? What if we just made a commitment that we're going to play, every Wednesday or every Friday or whatever it is? Because your kids, they need to have unstructured, loosely supervised playtime. Okay, so I'm going to get into that. Let me give you one more like one big picture of the why play is so important. And some of the things that I'm sharing right now, this part is from Jonathan Haidt's new book, Anxious Generation. I highly recommend you read it, and read it with a lot of love for yourself, and regulate your nervous system, because it might make you nervous, because it is literally called Anxious Generation, and it is about the mental health crisis of our youth. So one of the strategies that he talks about in that book is, bringing back play and unstructured, more risky playtime for kids, so that they are having more fun in the real world than they are in the virtual world. So that's what I want to help you kind of see how to do that today. Now, one of the things he talks about in that book is these two modes that we have as humans. Okay, so we have this discover and defend mode. So let me define them. Discover is a behavioral activation mode. It's when you're motivated to do something. And it's when your brain detects an opportunity, something exciting, something cool, a good idea. And then you get kind of positive emotion and excitement. And if a friend is around, that feels even better. And so we have this feeling of like, ooh, that's fun. Let me go see what that's about. Let me check that out. Let me try that. Let me get into that. I have watched this with my kids in terms of discover mode, where they discover, like the guitar. They both have discovered the guitar throughout their lives and get really into it and have taught themselves how to play the guitar. And Lincoln is, then took lessons, and he's really good at it. And they love playing the guitar. It's just for fun. It's for creativity. It's an outlet. And it's not on their screens, right? It's just fun. So discover mode is like my brain reading Anxious Generation. It's like, ooh, what can I talk about and learn, right? I just love it. It's that curiosity, that desire to learn. Defend mode is behavioral inhibition. It's when your body detects a threat or something wrong, and it gets flooded with stress and cortisol and negative thinking, and it retracts and it pulls back. So if you are in defend mode too much, it can create chronic anxiety. Discover mode is really what we want our kids' default to be. Can I climb that branch? Can I swim the length of the pool without coming up for a breath? Can I build a tower on the edge of the table? How many blocks can I put up here before it falls? Can I jump off the swing when it's this high? Those little mini challenges that you put on yourself when you're a kid. That's discover mode. And when you are in discover mode and you do something and it doesn't work out, like you jump off from a height and you skin your knee, or you bust up your arm or whatever, you're like, oh, you can't jump from that high. And now you have this experience and your neurons are firing together, and they're like training your brain of what your body can do and what it can't do. So when you're in discover mode, it helps your kids learn to judge risk for themselves, which I promise you're going to want them to be able to do when they're in high school. We want them to have real-world experiences and real-world failures that are affordable. Like a broken arm is an affordable mistake, right? Not obviously severing your arm, that would be terrible. But we're not giving them power tools. We're just giving them the opportunity to find the limits of the body, of physics, giving them these real-world experiences. We want them to take appropriate action when faced with risk. We want them to be able to cognitively process cause and effect, and they're not going to be able to do that unless they fail. We want them to learn that when things go wrong, even if they get hurt, they can handle it. And what that's called the developing the psychological immune system. So we want our kids to have the ability to handle and process and get past frustrations, minor accidents, teasing, exclusions, normal conflicts, without going into defend mode. Or if they go into defend mode and they feel, inhibited, Like, I don't want to go outside. I don't want bees. Oh my God, bees, right? I've had a lot of clients with kids who are afraid of bees. And Sawyer too. Sawyer was definitely afraid of bees and would scream and freak out, which is funny because Lincoln was the one who was allergic to bees. It didn't even make any sense to me. But for whatever reason, Sawyer got, very afraid of bees. And so we had to keep him in discover mode. How close are you willing to go to a bee? What do you think bees are all about? Let's study bees. Let's learn more about bees. Let's figure out where bees live. What attracts bees? What repels bees? Let's discover more so that we feel more resilient rather than defend against bees and get small and stay inside, right? So we want our kids to be willing to go into, I can handle it, I can figure this out. That's discover mode. Now, when you are thinking about play for your kids, and also for you adults who need to learn to play, this is a really important thing too. But really, for kids, the best kinds of play have a few features, okay? One, it's free play. So it's unstructured and loosely supervised. When I say loosely supervised, I mean that we are nearby, we're around, we're available, but we're not deciding and structuring every piece of the game or putting the boundaries so small that our kids aren't taking any risks. I was thinking about this, like both of my kids like to climb up really high things, Sawyer especially, and moms would look at me like I was insane because he would climb these giant poles that were like really not meant to be climbed at the playground. They were just holding up the shade structure covers and stuff like that. And he climbed all the way to the top and the moms would just look at me like I was insane. And I was like, well, he can climb down. Like he got up there but I would be nearby. Or like Lincoln, he would always go too far up a tree and then need to be kind of hoisted down, with his tushy and I'm standing nearby. So I'm loosely supervising, but I'm not standing there going, don't climb that, don't climb that, don't climb that. Okay. So that's another part of play is having there be some degree of physical risk. We want our kids to learn how to be in their natural environment. Skinned knees, wrestling too hard, pillow fights where your brain goes, climbing low trees, turning over heavy rocks, pretending to have a sword fight, jumping off the swings. So the key feature to this is that mistakes are generally not costly, but there is some risk. So the best kinds of play are free play, some degree of risk, embodied. So that means that they are in real life, in real time, in their body. I think it's funny, parenthetically, that we've had to use this word embodied now because so much of our life is spent virtually or sedentary and we're not in our bodies, right? So our kids are also not embodied a lot of times. We want them to have experiences in real life with their bodies. And best kinds of play also outdoors. Opportunity to practice moving through that complex natural environment is very good. Dealing with the elements, dealing with nature, being in the dirt, being in the mud. These are things that are super important for our children's, really their emotional health. The other parts that need to, not need, but are really good is if it's child-led. If the game that they come up with the game and they enforce the rules. Because adult games in sports, they have predetermined rules and boundaries. It's this number of innings and this number of outs and this number of, times you can bounce the ball after you touch it, like whatever the rules are, there are specifics. But with kids, they often make up their own rules and their own boundaries. And that helps them discover the physics of the world and their environment and dealing with the boundaries that exist in the natural world. I'm thinking of this story. I didn't plan to share this, but I have an older brother. He's 6 years older than me. And I was very mature and he was immature. So we kind of met in the middle. And we played a lot together. And we would have races all the time up and down the driveway with our bikes. And he, of course, he's 6 years physically older than me. And he would beat me all the time. And I remember whispering to my mom that this time, the person who came in last was the winner. That we weren't basing this on speed of like fast, but who could go the slowest. So my brother takes off and he goes to the top of the driveway and he flips, whips around and goes back down. And I'm just taking my sweet time, biking really slow, thinking I've won for sure. I even get off my bike at the top of the driveway, walk it, get back on, slowly go. And I am thinking I'm going to come into the finish line glorious, right? And then my brother goes, "You lost, you lost." And I was like, "No, I didn't. It's the slowest that wins this one." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, but you're disqualified because you got off your bike." And I was so mad because we hadn't defined the rules. And I had changed the game without telling him. And now I had got caught. And this is all part of child-led games, right? Just two people figuring out how to play together. And I have multiple experiences of this with my kids, with them figuring out the rules of a game, and with my own life. You could probably think of this too. And that's what we want. We want our kids to be out there struggling to figure out what the rules are. Like my kids used to do this game in the pool called pirating? I don't know what they called it. And it was super complicated and complex, and it involved multiple floaties and toys and things like that. And you could only go on somebody else's, raft in certain conditions. And there was a very complex set of rules. That is child-led play. I didn't make up pirate. I didn't come up with it. They come up with it. Part of play that's free play, physical risk, embodied, outdoors, child-led, and then with others is really valuable. And when there's an attuned play, so you're figuring out how to keep the game going, right? You're reading each other's emotions. You're taking turns. You're resolving conflict. You're sharing emotion. You're mutually reinforcing feedback loops of joy or pleasure. Those are the best kinds of play. Doesn't that sound fun? It sounds fun to me. So let me give you some examples of places to play, types of thrills, types of games, so that you can kind of have a little toolkit in your head. So, I wanted to tell you guys this crazy stat that research shows that the risk of injury per hour of physical play is lower when the games are child-led versus adult-guided sports. If your kid is playing adult-guided sports, they're more likely to get hurt than in their own child game. Because they know their risk, they know their bodies, they're figuring it out. They go just outside of risk. But adults don't always know that. And this is from an article in Sports Medicine from 2014. So I just thought that was a really cool, crazy stat. Now, places to play. Kind of already went in through some of this. We've got parks. There's lots of parks in town, hopefully, for your community. Open spaces and trails. Those are huge. You don't have to go hiking. You just go into the open space. You bring a chair, you bring a book, and you sit down. You have a blanket, you have some snacks, and they're just in this natural environment playing with twigs and sticks and rocks and, looking around. Now, if your kids have not had a lot of opportunity to play, if they have not had a lot of downtime, and they have not been they have a lot of screens in their lives. When they have downtime, they have screens. They aren't going to know what to do, which is just so sad. So next couple weeks, I'm going to talk about boredom and how to create more and more opportunities for this kinds of play. But I want you to trust that boredom is very uncomfortable and your kids will resist it. It feels like death to them. But if you allow it long enough without interruption with screen or sweets or a solution, your kids will struggle through it and find play. They will. They love play. They will find it. Now, if you have an only child or you're playing with just the one, you might need to initiate a little bit by saying, hey, let's see how heavy this rock is, or let's see how far we can throw this thing, or, how big is this tree? Can you get your arms around it? So you're just kind of creating little challenges in nature to engage them with the environment. Parks, open spaces and trails, community pools. Those are really great if you have a community pool, and allowing your kids to be in the pool if they're swim safe, and letting the lifeguards do their job, and you're paying attention and they're challenging themselves. How long can I hold my breath underwater? Can I swim across the pool? Can I get back to, you know, can I tread water for this much time? Or can I dive down to the bottom? How deep can I go? All those little challenges are so, so important. Obviously, your backyard can become a wonderland, your front yard, your neighbor's yard, the beach, if you live near the beach, or lakes and ponds and creeks. Again, you don't have to go hiking. That's really almost like with a purpose. I want this to be purposeless. You're just going. There's like creeks around our house that sometimes run, sometimes don't. And they just be mucking in the mud and the gross water. And I just trusted, like, I don't know, I've got wipes. We'll take a shower. They're not going to drink it. I'm paying attention. I don't know. The risk is not that, you don't have to worry about that much. So there's places to play. Now, the types of thrills that kids like, the challenges that they're seeking are heights, high speeds, dangerous tools, elements, rough and tumble play, disappearing, and wandering away. These are actually very thrilling to kids. So we want them to climb trees and play structures. We want them to go on the swings and go on fast slides. We want them to use hammers and drills and kitchen appliances with supervision. One thing we did with Lincoln, he sort of wasn't interested in it, but Lincoln loved rocks and stuff. And so he would collect all these rocks, and then I'd give him a hammer. I'm not kidding. And then he would lay a towel down, and then he would put the rocks down, and then he would put a towel on top, and then he would just bang them as hard as he could, and then he would open up the towel and see how much he smashed. And I don't know if I did safety goggles or not, you guys. I'm not sure. Sometimes we would just get swim goggles and he'd put them on to protect his eyes. But like I said, the towel was on top. Sometimes I would just give them walnuts and like a walnut cracker. That could be hours on the driveway just trying to crack the walnuts. And while they're doing it, I was literally just reading my book, just sitting there, drinking tea, sometimes talking to my neighbor if she happened to be outside. It was great. Kitchen appliances are also really interesting for kids. Elements like, ice and learning how to use the stove and understanding if you're camping. Campgrounds are hugely great for kids. Talking to them about fire. I have so many stories about my kids going outside of the boundaries, learning a big lesson, and then, overcoming that lesson. And so that, I think, is partly why I trust them as young adults, because they have had so much practice. Wrestling, playing with sticks, hiding, getting lost, allowing them to wander a little bit in Target or in a Walmart type of situation. 3 aisles over, go back in the, grab me a lemon, I'm in line. Like, let them do those little challenges. I know it feels scary. I know it feels unsafe. Do what feels good to you and try to allow as much as you can. Okay, types of games. Freeze tag is fun. So, what is it? Statue, like you yell out an animal or you yell out, a place, like pretend you're water, and then they have to like freeze as a statue of water. It's not easy and it requires a lot of cognitive function. It's funny. Freeze tag, sword fighting, hide and seek, rolling down hills, playing Foursquare, playing hopscotch. These are embodied games that can change the rules. You can decide how high you count, where the hiding places are, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Let them figure that stuff out. If you have a 2-story home, can you hide upstairs? Now, if you're a mom and you're like, I don't want anyone in my room, just be like, you guys can play this game as long as you don't hide in my room. Set a boundary. That's fine. I'm going to give you some other ideas about like toys themselves that foster free play. I want you to think about things that kids can move around and transform with their imagination. So toys that can become things, or toys that they can use to make things. For example, Legos, right? Not sets. I know you guys love to buy the sets and the kids love to buy the sets, But I want you to have free Legos around so that your kids can build freely from that. Blocks of different sizes, because those help build up towers and, structures and like places where your kids can play with figurines. Hot Wheels tracks, stuffed animals, dolls made of natural materials, wooden or high quality plastic animals, Playmobil, a big dress up bin, dinosaurs, art supplies, spy gear, bean bags, smooth pebbles, clay, tea sets, pickup sticks, crafts and sewing like beadwork or glue or feathers. All those are open-ended items. Outdoor items that foster free play are buckets and nets, shovels, scoops, bubbles, baskets, containers, chalk. All of those things, they can become something. They can design a playground for themselves. Okay, I did go through those kind of quick, so you can go back and listen to the podcast episode, or we can put together a list of these and just put them. We're going to put this list on the blog page of the podcast. So if you are a regular listener and you are on my newsletter and you got this in your email, just click on the podcast link and it'll take you to the website, which has this list. And then also, if you're not, please do that. Get on the newsletter. Go to calmmamacoaching.com, click podcast, and you'll see this episode, and it'll be right there, the list of all the fun things I just mentioned. Okay, so unscheduled and free play, just a little note, doesn't mean that you don't make plans. Like I said, you need to probably coordinate with other parents and figure out when they're free and what can that look like. I know that I had some very dear friends throughout the time I was raising my kids, and we sort of talked about it, and we made some commitments to each other to be available for our kids to play, because we didn't want to one person be in swimming lessons and the other person do day camp and all this stuff all summer and then not have anyone for our kids to play with. So we kind of coordinated a little bit to figure out when we would be free, and then said, like, let's plan to do that together, right? And that was a good thing. So I think find a good couple gals or moms and dads that are around in the summer and just be like, hey, can we hook up for play? I want to bring more play into my kids' life. Now, obviously, if you work and you send your kids to camp or other enrichments, that's great. Like, your kids also need structure. Don't get me wrong. They need both. They need defend and discover. They need structure and unstructure. They need big body movement and fine motor movement. They need rest and they need work. They need all the balance. So just looking at your life, if you're like, I can't really build anything in on the weekdays, but I can on the weekends to create more open, unstructured playtime, that's great. Do what you can. If you value this free play, you will make space and time for it. That's just how our values end up working. When it's important, we figure out ways to make it happen. Okay, I love this topic. Like I said, there is the factor of how much time your kids are spending on screens will make it harder for them to be motivated to do play, and it will be that they don't have a good habit. So I'm going to talk more about boredom and screen-free time in the next couple of weeks so that you can, learn how to overcome the obstacles. This episode is all about the value and how to, what we're talking about when we talk about open and free play. And then the obstacles are kids not overcoming boredom or over-reliance on screens. So then I'm going to give you a couple episodes on that too. Okay, if you like this episode, please let me know, because I'm always curious. And if you've read Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, please, contact me on Instagram at Darlene Childress, or reply to the email you get if you're on the newsletter. Just reach out to me, because my brain is on fire with the book. So highly, highly recommend it. All right, long episode, but I hope it was really valuable, and I will talk to you guys next time. Hey mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that again at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.